they're willing to lay it on the line, and they lay it on the line by reminding themselves of why is it necessary for me to bring my A game here? Because if you don't do that, what you do, and this is important because I know you got a lot of high performers listening, it's very easy for high performers to just go through the motions because they're good.
Those who live a high-performance life have figured out how to consistently bring their best, their A game, to the most important areas of life. On the A Game Advantage podcast, you'll get to peek inside the mind of the world's highest-performing individuals so you can learn and model the mindsets and systems that allow them to bring their A game every day. With your host, Elliot Rowe.
Hi, and welcome to the A Game Advantage podcast. I'm Elliot Rowe. Today's podcast is brought to you with Primed Mind, the mindset coaching app that can help you take your life to the next level. Check it out on iTunes and Google Play. For this week's episode, I interviewed Brendon Burchard. He was kind enough to come on for our opening episode, and I felt he was the perfect guest. Brendon is a well-known high-performance coach. He's a top-selling author. He's had over 100 million YouTube video watches of the videos that he's been making, and he's also got one of the top-charting podcasts in the world right now. All that he focuses on is helping people reach their top level, and that's what we're here to do at the A Game Advantage. So listen to him talk about how recovering from tragedy set him on the path to coaching, what the A game means to him, how habits can improve your life and take you on that path to success. And then he also talks to us about some surprising information that he found out regarding high performers when he conducted a multi-year, multi-country study on some of the most successful people on the planet. So without much further ado, let's jump into the interview with Brendon. So welcome to the show, Brendon Burchard. Absolutely amazing of you to come here and talk to us today. For those of you who don't know Brendon, which I'm sure is very few of you, he's one of the top high-performance coaches in the world. He's been on Oprah. He has top-selling books. He currently has, I believe, the #1 podcast in the world. So if you don't know who he is, go check him out. There's an incredible amount of information out there, and he helps just so many people. So quite the coup to get Brendon on the show. So really appreciate it. So Brendon, how are you doing?
I'm pumped to be here, dude. I'm pumped. And it's not a coup. It's like you earned it. You bust your ass serving people and trying to take them to the next level. So I feel like we do the same thing. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Very much appreciated. So I guess just starting off, how did you find yourself in the situation of looking to improve people's performance? Where did that come from? What sent you along this track?
Well, I recognized that I was a hot mess, and the impulse began for me to improve my own life. I think which it does for every coach and anybody who really wants to change other people's lives. At some point, you realize your life isn't what you wanted it to be, and then you do the hard, serious work to change it. And along the way, you get some bloody noses, you fall on your face, you screw up, then you make your mark. You make your income, you lead people, and then one day you go, you know what, I should share more wisdom about how I'm doing this. And for me, though, I wish I could say that was like a pretty journey, but it really began for me as a 19-year-old kid. And I was in a car accident at the perfect time of my life. I was suicidal at the time. I had just broken up with the first love of my life. We were high school sweethearts. We thought we were going to get married. And then the first year in college, she cheated on me. And it wrecked everything because it was one of those situations where my whole identity was tied up into that relationship. And then when the relationship fell apart, I fell apart. And then just a few months later was in a very serious car accident that really reframed my appreciation for life. Here I was, a suicidal, sad kid, literally planning my suicide. And then I get in an accident that almost takes my life. And I go, whoa, I don't want to lose life. And I learned in that process that at the end of our lives, we're all going to really think about our lives and how we lived it, because that's what I did as I was recovering. And I realized I was going to ultimately ask in my life if I really lived it, and if I really loved other people, or if I held back, and if I really made a difference, made a mark, changed the world, put a dent in it, did something. And those questions of did I live and did I love and did I matter that I asked now, whatever it is, 20 plus years ago, 22 years ago, I have carried with me. And every day I've tried to live intentionally and so that I could live, love, and matter. And along the way, what ended up happening, man, was people were like, hey, you changed. Because I was the suicidal kid in college. I came back after the car accident, fired up and appreciative of life. And I was like, I want to earn this second chance. I want to live a great life. And I was pumped to change my life. And I did. And people would say, well, how did you do it? I'm like, well, I changed my mindset about this. And now I'm trying these new routines. I'm doing this habits. And that got me more interested about how to get better myself, which started me researching expertise development, competency development, high performance studies, basically performance psychology so I could improve myself. Self-help too, did all the spiritual and personal development books you could possibly read. And I just got more and more happy and more successful, earned more and more money, led more and more people. And then people just said, well, how do you tell me how this goes? So I started teaching it and training it. And from that was sort of born my career as a writer. We're 6 books in now. And as a trainer, we do 8 live seminars a year. And then as a coach, where I work one-on-one with people. And that was a long story short, really fast, but that's kind of what brought me to you today.
And then you reached my podcast. So incredible story there. And I mean, when people around you saw that change, did you start to notice those changes in your sort of the circle of people around you as they were seeing that? So did they start to adjust as well? Or was it only the people who were, asking you for help that you saw the changes in?
At an early age, honestly, in my 20s, I'm in my 40s now, but, in my 20s, what I would try to really do is I would try to get everybody to change with me. And I was like, look, my life is changing. Things are good. Look at, let's have goals, let's go. But not everybody came along with that. And so it ended up being something where the real friends became the real friends, and the people who were kind of surface level and weren't as interested or having as high as ambitions, they kind of didn't stick around, and they became old friends, not growth friends.
And that's actually really interesting. It's something that comes up a lot with clients. Obviously, I'm working with a lot of high performers as well, and lots of them mention, what do I do with my old friends who they're refusing to grow? They're still living these negative lives. I feel like I don't have as many close friends as I did prior to being successful. And is this something you've seen with your clients as well over the years?
Oh, it happens with everybody. I'm blessed. I've coached 3 billionaires now. And most, major influencers in the marketplace I've gotten to train or work with, whether it's an Oprah, an Usher, a Tony, somebody, and I've had this really great opportunity to do that with them, and they all have struggled with this. And so, what I always tell people, it will happen to you at the top, and it will also happen at the bottom when you're first starting out. There's always going to be people who don't want to go along with you. But here's my philosophy. I think it's very different than most people. I don't believe in this mantra of just get rid of all the negative people in your life. This sort of crass approach that you see on social media, especially today, if they're negative, fuck them, get rid of them, don't ever talk to them again. Yeah. And I'm like, in real life, sometimes that's your brother. Sometimes that in real life, sometimes that's your spouse, sometimes that's your mom, sometimes it's someone, your best friend who bled with you. Sometimes it's people who really care for you. And I think it's less about getting rid of than it is about building what you do need. And I always say, if you have a negative environment or people who don't believe in it or who aren't growing as much as you are, it's not your job to change them. Let life be their educator, not you. Unless that's what you get paid for. If you're the coach for them, if they're paying you for training or transformation.
But if they're paying, they're already on that track.
They're already on that track.
They're showing willing, aren't they?
Yes. And so instead of trying to get rid of or judge or blame or be flippant or condescending, I turn people's attention and say, you know what? Let them live their life, and you build the support network you need over here. You get in the masterminds or the groups of amazing people you need over here, and you build up what you need over there. And along the way, you don't have to dismiss or be rude to those people. You can obviously lower the amount of time and attention and energy you give them. But if they want to climb on a new thing you're building, they'll climb on appropriately. If they don't, let life be their educator. Let them find their own pace. Because I tell people all the time, and this is true for my highest level clients, I always say, weren't you a hot mess at one point too? and then something changed you, and that was grace, that was timing, that was luck, or maybe it was just that decision to go for hard work. They'll find that one day, and if they do, great, and if they get the grace, great, and if they don't, that's their path, man. Don't put so much emotional energy towards trying to change everybody else's life. You work on you and lead those who want to be led.
Yeah, excellent sentiments. And you did all of this research for the book High Performance Habits. How long did that take you, putting all of that together?
Oh, man. I'm still recovering from the effort of that book. It was the largest, at the time, it was the largest study of high performers done worldwide ever, especially with all the psychometrics we collected. So we studied high performers from over 190 countries. And these were people who we actually validated as high performers, which typically meant they were in the top 15% of what they did. Not always, but typically over hundreds of different industries, literally. And we just collected all this data and we asked hundreds of questions and then did structured follow-up interviews. Then we did 360-degree interviews and assessments to ensure that what they were saying was true, that the results were true, and what they were attributing their success to was something that we could be tracked. And we looked for the habits that made them successful that could be actually validated. Meaning, you and I, we dispense a lot of advice. We hear a lot of advice. Everyone listening, you see all this advice on the internet, try this, try that. I said, okay, we know there's like a couple hundred different performance variables that can actually improve people's lives. And everyone listening, you could stop this thing at some point, write down every single thing that makes someone successful. But then you still have to say, well, which ones of that big list matter the most? And now, can you prove that that's the one that mattered the most? And that's what took us on a 3-year research journey, teaming up with academic researchers and psychologists around the country to validate what became known as the high performance habits, that there are these 6 habits that if you do these are the ones that highest correlate, in other words, have the strongest relationship with long-term success than the others. It doesn't say that these are the only things. It says that of all the things measured, these 6 are the most important. So focus on them. And so it took 3 years of research, about $1 million to conduct it. And every ounce of my sanity, time, and energy, because I'm not necessarily the best academic in terms of data science. So I had to learn that as we went with the teams. But it led to the book High Performance Habits. Amazon named it the number 2 business book of all books last year, outside of Ray Dalio's Principles, which is a great book. Number 3 was Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, her book Option B, which is also fantastic. And then I just launched it as a podcast, and I made season 1 the entire audiobook and gave it away to the world for free, which is why, as you introduced me, it just happened to be at the time we had just done that, and it became number 1 in our category, and then across all categories, and then number 1 podcast in the world. So it was pretty bananas. I'm sure that won't last, but at the time, as people were really interested in high performance habits, it kind of clicked.
And how many days do you think until someone copies you and puts their book on iTunes for free?
Oh man, I bet it already happened. At the time, no one had ever released a podcast with their full audiobook of a book that was a book that was actually really selling and currently, crushing it. In other words, they didn't do it during an active campaign. It's common maybe, 3 years, 5 years later. But you know what happens, man? Most people actually sell the rights to their audiobook to a publisher. So that would never be allowed because the publisher is going to go, wait, if you put it up there, we're not making any money on it. I didn't sell the audiobook so that I would have the ability to do this one day. So it was actually kind of strategic to make sure I kept the rights that were important to my brand and my business long term. I'm giving away, every one of those downloads, we're talking hundreds of thousands of them. I'm losing maybe $15 someone would pay on Audible, but I'm also serving my mission. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is say, how can I serve my mission? And how would I serve my mission if money didn't matter?
And that's sharing the message to as wider audience as possible, isn't it? So that it's just such a wonderful medium that you have available. And I want to dig into a little bit because those 6 high performance habits, and you're giving it away on podcasts, so I can mention it without stealing from you, Brendon.
Sure.
Seek clarity, generate energy, raise necessity, increase productivity, develop influence, and demonstrate courage. Now, was there any one of those that surprised you that it came up as one of these top 6?
Yeah. Honestly, half of them. Because again, I had like 100 different performance variables that I thought would have made it. So that these ones were the most important. It did surprise me. Of course, as you read that list, most people say, well, that's common sense. But I say, well, there's 2 distinctions here. One, for most people, common sense is not common practice. And that's why they struggle so much. They don't have the discipline and the consistency and the routine. Even if they know the idea, they're not implementing it on a daily basis. And then the second thing is the distinction of how. How do the world's most successful people practice those specific habits? So the list you read, what does surprise me from it the most, first is what's not on there. What's not on there is, as an example, creativity. If you and I were talking, dude, like 3 years ago before this study, and you said creativity is not going to make the list of high performance habits,
you'd never believe that.
I would have argued with you for like 5 beers and 7 hours. I would have absolutely never believed you. I would have argued because, see, for me, that's what's important. Like creativity is important to me, but I also found out it's not as important as these other things. So creativity didn't make the list. It doesn't mean it's not important to people. It doesn't mean it's not associated with success. It's just not as much as these other ones worldwide. And the second aspect would be the topic of raising necessity. I just thought that was so basic that it couldn't be the needle mover for people. But what it basically found was that high performers do truly feel that it is necessary to excel at what they're doing, that their identity has so much formed a part of it that it is necessary for me to do well here. And specifically, it's important for me to do well here for another person, not just myself, and also not just to change the world, this big picture, gaspy thing. That most high performers really made it because they were fighting for themselves or their immediate family or someone that they loved. And so they developed these practices. A lot of them didn't know they had this habit of reminding themselves of who needed their A game. If I go to sit down at a poker table, I'm not just going to be thinking about my strategies, what I've learned, what I've done in my life. I'm going to go, okay, I got to win this one right here because this person is counting on me. And it's putting performance pressure on ourselves. And there's a lot of literature that says putting that performance pressure on yourself is bad. And I'm here to argue that's actually not what the data showed.
That doesn't show that. Yeah.
Yeah, statistically, it's like, no, high performers do that. They're willing to accept that discomfort, that risk, that ego challenge of saying, look, it is important for me to excel here. That excellence is important. And if I fail, I am going to allow myself to be frustrated with myself, not stop, not quit, not get mad, not ruin my performance at the next round. But I'm going to go, dang it, you know what? Should have known that. Improve. Got it. And they're always moving forward with the new solution for the next level, not bemoaning themselves, but they're willing to lay it on the line, and they lay it on the line by reminding themselves of why is it necessary for me to bring my A game here? Because if you don't do that, what you do, and this is important because I know you got a lot of high performers listening, it's very easy for high performers to just go through the motions because they're good. And when you're good, that's often the biggest danger area for you to actually advance to the next level, to really grow. Because when you're good, you take things for granted and you just you're less strategic, you're less disciplined, you're less intentional because you can bumble through and beat people, but you can't get to the next level by bumbling through. You got to adopt, again, more strategy, more discipline, and more razzing of your internal psychology to perform well.
And that's really interesting because this is something I've seen over different industries with high performers, people who are struggling to get to their A game. And as we're working through those issues, they're performing well rather than at their full potential because of a fear of failure and the thought that if they give it their all and they fail, it's going to be crushing to their ego. But if they don't give it 100%, failing doesn't quite feel as bad. So it's almost like staying off their A game gives them some sort of safety net that keeps them safe. And is that something you've seen with high performance as well?
And hey, there's another flip side of that coin too, which is a lot of people, they're not just scared of the failure that would come if they really put their all in or they really invested in themselves. They're also as equally fearful of the outcome. Like the book opens up with this conversation with this woman who very, very successful, cover a magazine type of woman, 10,000 employees. I asked, why are you so scared to go to the next level? And she said, well, because I'm barely handling this one.
Yeah, it's that fear of success, isn't it? It can be devastating.
It is a fear of like, well, I remember, man, the first time I ever did a $10,000 per ticket event, it was this, very private $10,000 ticket. We had 300 people in there, and it was me teaching like my most advanced stuff. And we were talking about at one point 10xing revenue of a business and how that might work. And this woman stood up in front. She raised her hand and asked this question. It shocked me. She said, but I'm scared, like 10xing my revenue, that would terrify me. And I'd never really thought of that before because that wasn't my personal journey. I'd be like, 10x, let's go.
This is perfect.
Because here's the thing, and this is important to high performers. High performers have to have the confidence in their ability to figure things out. That's the type of confidence they have. They don't have necessarily just confidence of like the ego, self-esteem type confidence of like, I'm great. Their confidence is actually in their ability to discern what matters and figure things out. That's where they're confident. Like my confidence is like, you could put me in any position in the world and I'm going to be confident. Doesn't mean I'll perform the greatest. And it's not false ego. It just says, you know what? Give me enough time, energy, investment, and learning and mentorship here. I'll figure it out. I'll get better. It might not happen overnight. It might not be pretty, but at some point I can figure this out. And that confidence that high performers have, it's necessary for them to remember that about the future, that listen, your next level of income, you can handle it. Hiring those 10 more employees, you can handle it. Having that next level of fame, you can handle it. You just have to, as you're doing that, again, get the mentorship, get the training, get the coaching, learn from others, be diligent and intentional about what you're doing. But I always tell people, don't fear that next level. Because, I always say people only fear three things. They fear, one, the pain that would come from loss. I lose my status, I lose my reputation, I lose my money. Then they fear what's called process pain, otherwise known as hardship. Like, this is just gonna be too hard for me. It's too difficult. I can't handle that struggle or that adversity. It's gonna be too challenging. I'm not enough to handle it. So they're scared of that and the repercussions of not handling the hardship because it might lead to loss of reputation. And then they also fear outcome pain. What if, dude, I do everything you've coached me to? What if I take every action you've taught me? I go through all that hell of change, and then the grass isn't greener over there. If that's possible, why should I even try? And a lot of people mess up their mind in that way. So our job sometimes as coaches and trainers is to flip that and help them not worry so much about loss, but understand clear insight into the gains and the intentions behind those gains. It's not about, worrying about hardship, but teaching people to honor the struggle.
And the enjoyment of the struggle as well. I think there isn't a finite place where we are happy, where a certain level of success or money or fame makes someone comfortable. It's that journey to getting there, the people you meet on the way, the experiences you have, the people you can help.
Yes.
I think that's what everyone should really be focusing on. Yes, maybe when you do become the most famous whatever in the world, it doesn't solve all of your problems. But the fun of the journey on the way is what you should be looking to bring your A game to.
Yeah. And we found that too with high performers. We asked them, how do you know when you feel like you're on your A game? How do you know like you feel like you're high performing? We really were after some of that, emotional state stuff. And the three things that people shared with us was, to your exact point, the first thing that they shared was that they felt fully engaged, that they were fully engaged with the difficulties, with the challenges, with the struggles. They were mindful in the moment. They felt a high level of presence with whatever they were doing. And there was a sense of like full immersion, flow, presence, whatever, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. We just call it, they were fully engaged. And then the second thing that they shared with us is they felt joy. Even when it sucked, even when it was hard and they were growing and people were like, what? And they didn't feel the joy just because of the task at hand. Because, washing dishes doesn't necessarily make you joyful or, handling 100 employees doesn't make you joyful. It's that they were very conscious about bringing joy to a situation. When people come into my house, they're always like, what should I bring? I'll say, bring the joy.
Bring a smile.
Just bring the positive attitude. They're very, high performers are very responsible for the energy they bring into their interactions, their circumstances, their day. And that's what gives them the joy. And the last thing they also shared with us is they felt confident. They felt confident in their ability to figure it out and perform well. And that's what helped them perform well.
And then narrowing into you as a high performer, obviously I coach as well. I understand what it's like working with lots of clients, and you're also doing writing books, touring the world, giving speeches, doing events. How do you manage your energy and your time so that you're able to perform on this level?
Oh man, I'm pretty disciplined because if I'm not, I'm a car wreck. So, simple things that I do every day. And this is for me, I have my morning routine, which I did this morning. I've done every morning for like 20 years. I get up, I spend 20 minutes of movement in the morning. So that movement can be, whether it is my workout for the day, if it's a 20-minute high intensity thing, or it can be 20 minutes of just flexibility, mobility, yoga, calisthenics, qigong, something where I'm just moving around and activating my body. Then I do 20 minutes of reading good things. So it's just consuming, for me, I'm a reader. So it's reading psychology, spirituality, business, or leadership. And then I spend 20 minutes preparing the day. And it's hard because a lot of times, the day seems prepared for me already. There's this interview here. There's this video shoot I'm going to go do right after this. There's this meeting I'm going to do with the team after this. There's this coaching client I'm going to call from New York after that. Then there's this thing I'm going to do in the evening with my family. And it's like the day is already full, but I still spend 20 minutes thinking about the day. So first, before I even look at the calendar, I pull out this little piece of paper and it has 3 rows in it. It has projects at the top, people in the middle, priorities at the bottom. And I fill it out every day, even if the calendar is already full. I think of at the top, I go, what are my major projects I'm working on and the 5 things I'd have to do to move towards them? Doesn't mean they might happen that day, but it's keeping on the dashboard of my mind the major things I'm working on. Even without any influence, I'm not looking at the calendar, not looking at any tasks, just it's a blank piece of paper. It says projects, people, priorities. The people category is just from the top of my mind, who do I need to reach out to and who am I waiting on a decision from? I just brainstorm that. Then I say, okay, priorities for today. Without even looking at the calendar, what's important for me today based on where I'm at? And I write down all the priorities, narrow it down to the top 3 that must happen today, regardless of what says on my calendar. Then open up the calendar. I look at the calendar, absorb what I'm going to do that day. And then I spend about the last 5 minutes just visualize, like my eyes closed, and I literally walk through the day. And my question of each of those activities, I say, okay, what would I have to do during that thing to do it well? Like when I thought about this interview this morning at 6 a.m., we're filming this around whatever time it is. I think, what is it, noonish?
12:30 for you, yeah.
Okay, so 6 hours ago when I did this, I thought in my mind, what would make me do that with excellence? And I thought, you know what? Right before, make sure I take a break right before that call. I do a little stretching. I do a little vocal warm up. I get myself in a good place. I make sure I get my station set up 10 minutes earlier. So I'm going to do this well with my friend. Let's have that intention. So I had that intention at 6 a.m. this morning. So walking through the day visually and mentally and asking how I can do it great has really helped me, because otherwise I could go through the motions and I could be a hot mess. And I would have never been this far, this fast, this early in my 40s if I hadn't been doing this for a long time, because I know I'm easy to be distracted.
Man, you're speaking my language, because obviously I'm a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, I know.
So the idea of visualizing to prepare is very in my roadhouse.
Yeah.
So yeah, just awesome.
I mean, Ellie, you could teach me a lot of stuff about that. No question. For real.
Well, give me a shout. I'm more than happy to help you out.
Thank you, man.
And I also wanted to sneak in a question as well of, we've got the high performance habits of all of the good things you're seeing in high performers. As you look over your clients over the years, these different CEOs, billionaires, is there sort of the opposite to that? So an issue that you see reoccurring with these people who are already successful, but there's just something that they need your help tweaking?
Oh, yeah. I guess the total opposite would be where they fail. And I'll bring that up because it's important, because I know most of your folks are high performers, and I can tell here's predictably where you will fail. And I know it sounds, facetious to say that, but the data actually proved it out as well in the research, is that 3 things usually derail a high performer. Number 1 is superiority. They start to think that they don't need help, that their stuff is better than everyone else's, that they start ruining relationships because that superiority comes into their ego, where they be condescending. And ultimately, they kind of stop learning, is really the thing that hurts them the most, is because they think they're so good, they stop the level of learning they had before, and they become dismissive of the people around them. And that's just a train wreck. The second thing is neglect. Neglecting the foundational things that make you happy and successful. For some people, that's neglect of sleep. Some people, it's neglect of your wife. Some people, it's neglect of paying attention to the numbers and the metrics. But you're not paying attention to what you should, that are the primary movers of your happiness and your progress. And then the third thing is, and this is a one I work a ton, and I bet you do this all the time too. And this one surprised me that it made the top 3. I'd guess it would be like the top, 50. But number 3 is disappointment and dissatisfaction. More often than not, it's the second one. It's dissatisfaction. That high performers actually, they have a good life. There's a bank account there. They've got the family, or they've got, some love in their life. They've got some progress. They've got some clarity, but they're dissatisfied because they're not taking the time to psychologically integrate the wins. They're not give the win, W-I-N. They're not allowing themselves to feel the win so that their psychology becomes more happy and grateful and confident. So they've got a lot done, but they still don't feel any different or feel any better, even though they've had all this forward progress, so that they're perennially dissatisfied. And even though there's this old saying, never be satisfied, actually be careful, because if you are never satisfied, you will never want to engage with the thing, because we don't want to keep doing the things that dissatisfy us. Many people who've ever been, broken up in a relationship or got divorced, you got divorced because you were dissatisfied with that relationship. Dissatisfaction kills things. And so be careful. If you're doing good, take some moments to celebrate those wins and really feel them and build that into your routines and your progress, because you've worked your ass off. You've come this far. You got to allow yourself to feel it. Otherwise, you won't stay engaged with it.
And it's something where I think it's quite scary for those people as well. If they haven't had the joy after the success, I've definitely had the conversation of them saying, well, what can I do to make me happy if I now have all of my dreams have come through and I'm still not happy? And it's because they haven't been able to process that joy on the journey. And a lot of work goes into those sessions.
It's one of the most important things, man. I'm with you on that. And I every level I've worked with is helping people bring at least some level of more presence and joy to the process and the outcomes they're already in their life. Not about 10 years from now, but it's like, man, you had a good day. You had a good match. You had a good game. You had a good, let's talk about that. And take in the learnings from it, but also take in the emotional positivity that, we, especially high performers, sometimes they feel like they're alone, which they're not. But they should, they got to make sure that they're also the ones patting themselves on the back and saying, hey, man, good job. Remember where you came from? Like, here I am. I'm going to talk with you, Elliot. And I'm thinking, I'm this kid from Butte, Montana. And we're talking about my book that's, my 6th book that's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, this podcast that debuted #1. I get to talk with guys at your caliber. The kid from Butte, Montana. I take that in and I go, oh, man, I'm so grateful and blessed. I can't believe I came this far from that, sad, suicidal kid at 19 who had his heart broken and thought life was going to end, to having this rich and full life that I get to architect every single day. I don't lose touch with that. And honestly, when I do lose touch with that, that's when misery starts creeping in, or I'm like, I lose motivation, or I'm like, ugh, I got to do this day. And so I think it's really important for people to really get that psychologically, that idea of integrating the wins. It really does change how you feel success, and also how I think you serve others, because you want them to feel that level of engagement and joy from what they're doing.
And I think you can actually hear the joy in your voice, Brendon. So, it's not something that you're just saying, that really comes through in the way that you're speaking.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to hear. Now, in your book, you have a test people can take where it gives them an idea of what their score is and the things that they can then do about it. Where can people find that test so they can match themselves up and see which areas they could be improving in?
Yeah, they can go to, I think the link is High Performance Indicator. They can go to or highperformanceinstitute.com, and they should be able to find the link there. But I think it's highperformanceindicator.com. And yeah, that's the free public version of some of the stuff we broke down from the academic. It's not the exact academic one we ran, obviously, for the research, but one that kind of kicks out 6 scores for you in each of these habit areas so that you can see, oh, wow, psychologically, this is the one I need to work on the most. And it gives you a score from 1 to 5 on each of those 6 habits. And, if you're below a 3-6 in any of these areas, you really got to focus there. And most people are in many of those areas below a 3-6. High performers tend to be in that 4.2 or above range of the 5. So it's pretty cool to get that.
Well, you're making me feel a lot better because I took this test last week.
What'd you get? What'd you get?
I got 4.75 and I was completely on the test. So see if you can beat my score out. I got that and I was thinking, hey, I should be scoring higher.
Yeah.
There's some things I need to do.
Well, there's a high performer right there. I got to be more excellent at this assessment. But what's cool about that? I mean, that does put you in easily that top 10%. And it says, no question asked, that that you're not only enjoying and your success, but it means you're also taking probably care of your well-being. It means that your relationships are important to you. Because what I tell people all the time, high performance isn't just about the external measures of long-term success. High performance, actually, the way that we defined it in the research is it's long-term success while still maintaining well-being and positive relationships, which is the hard part. Because we could all compromise our relationships and our happiness for 10 years and make some money, but that's not going to allow us to be high performing over the long term.
And you can't buy those.
You can't buy them back. Yeah. So that's what I think the magic of the book and why it all took off was just a different approach. It's like, wait, let's measurably show you how you can achieve external things, but still maintain your well-being and your positive relationships, which obviously you must have done to get that score. And it also, what's funny is the highest level of people who get those kinds of scores, 4.7 and above, they tend to be people who actually do serve other people in terms of coaching, training, psychology, or in a leadership capacity. Like, they're the person, either they're the CEO who really does a great job mentoring their people, or, that midline manager who oversees 30 people who just really is a really people forward person. It's usually people who score that high have in some way or some capacity studied personal development or leadership or psychology, or learned enough along the way, the bumps and the bruises, to understand how to affect change in others.
The other kind of education.
Yeah, to actually understand how they can change themselves and other people in either their career or in a leadership capacity. And so what I always say is, like, when you get a 4.7, we call them change agents. It's actually pretty rare, man. So congratulations.
Oh, really? As I say, this says something about my competitiveness. I was thinking, surely I should be getting like a 4.9.
Hey, I'll tell you, the first time I took it, the research version, probably not the exact version you took, but the very first research version I took, I got a 4.23.
Oh, crikey.
And yeah. So I was like, dang, I'll take the latest version with yours and we'll match it up. And
we can compare notes. Well, Brendon, I know you have to head off and do your video recording and such. So thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, check out Brendon on social media. We'll put up the links so you can find the podcast, listen to the book for free. It really is awesome stuff that he offers. And once again, Brendon, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Hey, man, such a thrill, and congratulations on everything you're doing, Elliot. It's awesome.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So it was great to talk to Brendon, and really kind of him to come on for our very first episode. I think there is a ton of information there that can be used to help improve your life. So hopefully you enjoyed that and you managed to get those nuggets of information that you can use to take yourself to that next level. If you're interested in Brendon's products, go to brendon.com and you can find all of his programs, and you can also get him to send you a free hard copy of his book, and you can take those tests through that like we were talking about in the show. Also, if you have interest in using those visualization techniques, make sure to check out my app, Primed Mind, which you can download on the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please subscribe. We'll be bringing on more great guests like Brendon each week and giving you lots of information to take you to your A game. I shall talk to you all soon.